So if you thought I did a bad job of explaining why I love Age of the Prime's air raid so much, strap yourselves in for me trying to explain Legacy Quake. I've been really interested in getting a Quake for many years. The Titan's Return version didn't really click with me because I already had Hardhead and the mold is fine, but I don't know, there's something about like G1 Targetmaster Quake, the colors and the unapologetically compromised boxiness of the tank and robot mode that just really appealed to me. But I never ever went around and I never got around to getting that G1 Quake. Then Legacy rolls around and we get this. And I once again just kind of passed on it, not because I didn't think it was cool, but it was just kind of like, okay, it's a Skullgrin rework. Like, it's not, they didn't just repaint Skullgrin. There's more going on here. But I kind of lost interest in Skullgrin pretty quickly, so I was kind of like, if it's derived from Skullgrin, then I'm probably not going to stay all that interested in it, so I'm going to hold off. But then I just kept thinking about him, and he would come up on, various storefronts, and I'd be like, man, I kind of want to get Quake, but no, I'm not going to get him. And I just kept putting it off, and then eventually it just wasn't in stores anymore, and I was kind of SOL. But I was able to get a hold of him via a eBay lot that came with several different figures, a couple of which I actually wanted. So I bought the lot for the figures that I wanted, sold off, or I'm still trying to sell off the ones that I didn't, and now here we are. And yeah, I was not expecting to be this smitten with Legacy Quake, because aside from the fact that he is a big deluxe, he doesn't really have a lot going for him. The transformation is a little bit awkward. The vehicle mode is... We'll get to that. The Targetmasters, I don't remember their names, so I'm just going to call them Thing 1 and Thing 2. They're very, very basic, even more basic than Battlemasters. These are just planks. The only articulation they have is this. And you can't even do the Battlemasters thing of popping the gun off and handing it to them to hold. These are just little tombstones with flip-out bits at the end. But the sculpting is nice. I like that they're both actually different. They still have the chest cannon, the Warpath cosplay, whatever you want to call it. But I appreciate the fact that you can see, despite them being functionally identical, they are molded very differently. The detailing is different. Thing 1 has shoulder pad missiles. Thing 2 has these really aggressively flared out bell bottoms. It's interesting, and they also kind of, with the exception of the underwear and the face, they kind of painted the inverse of each other. Shoulder pads are painted here, but the shoulder pads aren't painted here. Torso is painted here, torso is not painted here, that kind of thing. I don't know. I think these things are very simple. They're just glorified accessories. They're not even glorified. They're just accessories. But I do think that they're kind of neat for what they are. And I like that you can have him basically just taking his children to the park, or they can turn into weapons and he can murder fools with them. And we will deal with the whole weapon bit in a minute or two. But yeah, I think that's kind of neat. Off to the side with you. And now for Quake himself, I will admit, and I feel like I already admitted, he's a little bit on the weak side in terms of just a general toy, bot, whatever. But I still absolutely adore this thing. And I can't even really explain it. The color breakup is there with the black into gray. I really like the big blocky tread shins. I don't know why. I just really like that. But the black into the gray, and then this kind of almost light burgundy color for the reddish bits for the hips and thighs and shoulders and parts of the torso, and then this blue that doesn't really go with the red, but it also kind of does. And you only have black on the forearms and the feet and the cannon barrel on his back. It's kind of a weird color scheme, and the two main colors aren't even really complementary, but it still kind of works. in a weird way. And something about the bright gold for the face, I think, just brings it all together. I can't explain it because, like, if you're thinking of this in terms of color theory, this is kind of a mess. But somehow it works. That said, I cannot wait to get a repro label set for this guy. I know they make it. I've had it on my reminder list for months and months now, but I just haven't I haven't placed a Toy Hacks order for a while, so I think the next time I do that, I will get stickers for this guy, because I think he's going to look absolutely killer with some stickers. But yeah, he's weird and simple and compromised in terms of his design, but I can't help but find it incredibly charming and lovely. And again, I love the big boxy tread shins, and how the treads are just in his shins. There's no treads anywhere else on his body. I don't know why I really like that, but I do. And the way it just ends in these big plank feet. Something about all of this appeals to me on such a weird level. I don't think the appeal of the head is that weird, though. I feel like that's pretty easy to figure out. The darker gray for the helmet with the bright gold for the face is fantastic. The red for the eyes is nice. The articulation is kind of frustrating, but it is there. As I'm doing it off camera, the articulation is kind of frustrating, but it is there. He also has these bright red eyes that you can... Not even bright red, they almost look like slightly pinkish. And that really works with the gold. The head is also vaguely Decepticon logo-y. Like, it's not the same, clearly, but he's got the ears and like the head diamond that's sort of evocative of the crest logo faction symbol whatever in his chest that you can barely see because they chose a purple that is way too close in tone to the blue. I feel like that needed to be either a lot darker or a lot brighter. But yeah, I don't know. I can't explain it. I just really like his head sculpts and head designs. Like futuristic robot knight helmet with unnecessary ears and just a shiny gold face. Now, his articulation is pretty decent, actually, considering. He's got that head motion which I showed, which you don't really get any up or down. You don't get any side to side, but it does rotate. So there's that. The arms can go all the way around. They can go out to very slightly past 90. You get a bicep rotation. You can kind of fudge a little bit of a butterfly motion, but it's not like solid. It doesn't really lock in anywhere. So it just sits like that, or you can bring it back very slightly. The elbows bend way past 90. The wrists do not move, but you can bend them down if you want. So I guess if you had him like holding out a sword or something, you could do that, but he doesn't come with swords. You have waist rotation that can go all the way around as long as the tank turret section back here isn't in the way. If this gets rotated off center, then it will block the waist rotation. Also, if you really wanted to, you could just unpeg this. And I do kind of wish that this could peg in somewhere else. It can't. Like the tabs up here are just a little bit too narrow, so you can't really peg this on over his shoulder. He doesn't have any pegs on the forearms, like round pegs. I don't know. I feel like it would have been cool if you could peg this somewhere else, like a shield or something like that. But if you want to, you can unfold it into the tank turret, and he can loosely hold it like a fan or crossing guard sign or a skillet. A little flapjack flipping. So outside of the waist rotation, you also get thighs that can, or hips that can move forward all the way, and back probably could go all the way if that isn't in the way. Yeah, because this bit was hitting into it. So it can go back a little bit further than 90 without the tank mass there. But with it there, it can still go back about that far. And then if it rotates, it can go back a little further. It can go out to 90. You get thigh rotation, and then you get slightly over 90 degrees of bend. And I think the knee's actually in a pretty decent place too. So that's cool. And then for the feet, you get a very, very slight, almost imperceptible amount of forward tilt that is way too loose to amount to anything, so it's just going to sit like that. but you do get inward ankle tilt, which is pretty extreme. So yeah, he is pretty posable. He can do a slightly better version of the really terrible live-action Prime pose. Now, once again, his Targetmasters don't have any articulation, but you can fold out the barrels on thing 1 and 2, and they form gun-ish shapes. It's very hollow up top in their gun form, which I feel like, I don't know if there's a winning strategy here. Like, they had to hollow it out somewhere, and I feel like if they hollowed it out in the front, that would be really bad, because then all of this would get ruined, but up top it just kind of looks lackluster. You can hold them, you can peg them together, so you can kind of sort of peg them together, but then you run into problems where like the toes get in the way. So while you're kind of double stacking the guns, it very slightly almost works like this, but doesn't really seem to want to work like this, because you may notice it's like this thing 1 here is pointing up slightly. Also, the peg on thing 2 is actually painted. I've put this in and out of Quake's fist more than once, and also into this peg hole a few times, and like it hasn't worn off yet, so hopefully it's relatively scratch resistant, but that's a thing. Also, you can do the other version of the double stacking thing where you stack them up this way, and this fits a little bit better, and I kind of like how this makes like a big chunky super weapon looking thing that's really awkward and silly. The thing that I don't like is these bits here, which I assume are there to like brace this piece when it's plugged in. Those push up against the waist, and both of these figures have a painted waist. So when you plug it in, I feel like you're risking the paint on whichever one is plugged in up top, and I don't really like that either. But these are just the accessories. And as is the case with accessories most of the time, they can plug into his hands, and he can do the shoot bangs with the tiny men. And I feel like he pulls it off pretty well. Maybe that's just, you can't see. I'm shrugging behind the camera like you can see me. So yeah, simple and compromised in virtually every way, not just the accessories, but I can't help but love him. Much like how I can't help but love Age of the Prime's Air Raid. It's oddly difficult to say those words in rapid succession. And a Blockies figure. Well, I mean, I guess the Blockies figure isn't compromised, but you know what I mean. Maybe. If you watched the video on Air Raid. I don't know. I'm gonna stop talking now. So Quake's transformation, as I both alluded to and said outright, is a bit awkward, but I actually really like it. So, to start, going to just leave the arms out to the side. I'm actually going to do this weird on purpose, just because of a thing that you can kind of do halfway through the transformation that I like. Because the way he transforms is basically 2 distinct chunks. You've got the lower lower body and then the upper body. So I'm going to do the lower body first. So this is all usual transformation stuff. Going to straighten out the legs, or heels rather, and then we're going to start with all of this stuff. And this stuff is a little bit weird, because essentially what you need to do is you need to bring this tank tread section out and around, but it's tabbed into the back piece here. And additionally, it's going over this black strut here. But then once you get all that undone, this can't move because the thigh's in the way. So essentially what I do is I'll bend the knee, pop this out so that it untabs from here, start swinging this around. Once that's swung out a little bit, you can see that this groove is now no longer holding the black piece here. Then I'll start moving the black piece up and then kind of bring this back in. And this allows all of this to move. So with all of this moved, now we can hinge the knee and thigh back on this double hinge in here. And with this all double hinged out of the way, now there's plenty of room for this to fold around. And with that folded around, now this can hinge in the rest of the way, and that will collapse like so. The foot folds in, And then this whole strut folds back around, and this chunk that was pegged into the back now folds around, and you want to make sure this tab goes in here. So you kind of want to fold this around first like this, and then as you bring this down, it'll kind of roll over all of this. So there is that. Now the reason I'm doing this way is because you also want to move the treads up like this for the tank mode. But what I like doing, because I am silly, is first off, I'm just going to leave the knee bent so I can show you more what I'm talking about later. But like, I like to rotate the waist around because then it gives him like a weird little man with robot man with like tank, with a tank bottom. We'll see when we get to the other leg. But yeah, you want to untab this, bring this out slightly so that we can bring out this strut more, and then bring this back. Now this will rotate around. This will nestle in. This can fold in. This can fold down. And essentially you want this gray piece at like a 90-degree angle, and then this can come around, and once again, try to keep it on camera. This just kind of rolls around the end of the tank tread. And then we can peg all of this together, making sure everything stays together. There we go, peg all that together. And now, because I rotated the waist around, when this comes down, these tread pieces kind of sit over the backs of the hips. But now it just kind of looks like he's just de-duding. There are no wheels on the bottom, so we can't really, but I don't know. I just think that's funny. I like that. I like that he can do that. It's very final battle of robot jocks, and there are like maybe 3 people who know what I'm talking about. But anyway, you don't actually have to rotate the waist for the transformation. In fact, you don't want to, but I just like doing it for this. Everything else is normal, but that waist rotation is that's just for Rob. Anyway, now we're gonna rotate the arms so that the elbows are pointing in, flip the fists back so that they go into the forearms, and then pop open the chest. And there you can see the inner workings. And now you pull this out, like you pop this out, but because of this being just pegged on and everything, I find it's easiest to flip this open and just push from this side. So push this to untab this from here, because all this is tabbed in pretty solidly in here. Let's bring this out, and then before straightening this out entirely, bring this flap up so that as you bring this down, this edge piece will go underneath the lip of the gray turret piece, and that will all lock together like that. I'm going to bring this back around. If you did not do the waist rotation, then it would have just been like this to begin with. But doing that, now the very important thing you always want to remember to do when going between modes is this black piece here slides up and down. It slides up for robot mode, and it slides down or forward for tank mode. And it does actually click. Like you can see, this is wiggly, and it's not fully seating in here. You want to just keep going, and it will snap into place. And with that done, now these arms can come together and peg together. And you want to do that slide up first, because otherwise these won't have room. And then these mushroom peg openings on the biceps will peg into these tabs on the black piece. And now this reverse ab crunch that you can't actually use in robot mode hinges down, and all of this will collapse down. And essentially what's going to happen is these tabs on the backs of what were and still are technically the shoulders will go into these slots on the sides of the treads on the inside, and then these tabs on the outsides of what are the shoulders will go into these slots on the black struts here. And so what I do is I kind of bend it down so that everything is lined up, and then I just sort of pull a little bit on the sides so that I can get these tabs underneath the tread section. And once they're underneath the tread section, then they'll tab in no problem. And you just kind of squish down, squish in, and that is Quake as a box. Last thing you do is untab the tank barrel from this little slot here, fold that all out, And there is this. So Quake's tank mode is dire. this is not a great tank. It barely reads as a tank. If it weren't for this and the treads, it would just be a weird compacted robot. It'd be like Blur from that episode of Transformers Animated. You pop this off and like, what are you even, without the treads, what are you even looking at here? This is nothing. That said, I still really like it. I do actually kind of wish that this piece here was done in the same gray plastic as the tank turret piece and the treads, because this piece, if this was in gray, when this is plugged on, it would at least make the turret section look a little bit more complete instead of it just looking like this little sliver up here. It wouldn't necessarily clean up the tank, and who knows, maybe it would be a problem with the robot mode because then his back would be gray instead of this blue that you have in the chest. I don't know. And I'm sure it's like a molding thing, especially considering thing 1 here comes in a purple that is not on this figure. So, yeah, it's probably like a molding thing, but it would have been nice. But yeah, this tank mode is something they're definitely calling a tank mode. They're trying to. It's so compromised. His crotch is sticking out the back. His whole body is just stretched up. He's basically like folded in half from like the back, like that guy who got sucked through the wall in the remake of The Blob. And that's kind of it. It's very awkward. Doesn't really read as a tank. They tried in some ways, I think, to mask some stuff. Like you've got this red going into the red, the grays and stuff, but then like it's the blue kind of interrupts all that, and you've got some black up here that doesn't really work. And yeah, I mean you can technically rotate the tank turret, and if you rotate it too much, it starts to raise, which in a way is kind of neat. It kind of makes it look like it raises on its own, but you can't bring it back down when it's turned. And of course, if you try to go all the way around, it looks even worse than Studio Series 86 Megatron's tank turret rotation. I don't know, there's a charm to this. It's bad. It is not a good tank mode. But I also really like how it's just this cute little box that's really trying. It's trying so hard to convince you it's a tank. The Targetmasters can be plugged on. You can plug them onto the top of the turret if you want. And that... whatever takes attention off your turret, I guess. That's certainly a thing that can be done. Also, you could, if you wanted to, peg them into the sides here. And they actually don't go below the treads, so you can have them like this, and that might actually look a little bit better because it makes the rest of him look a little bit more cohesively messy. Like, I think that's the thing with this tank mode, is that, like, this is so clearly well-defined tank treads, and this, from like this angle at least, is so clearly a well-defined turret section, but everything in between and around it is just mush. And size-wise, here he is with Air Raid, and they're both deluxes, but Quake has much more mass. Even though he compacts into a smaller box, Air Raid is kind of cheating by stretching out these wings in the fuselage section, because really the robot's just compacted right up under here, and that's it. I don't know, it's kind of cute how they're both trying. And here he is with a Blockies figure, just because. So yeah, I've probably done a really bad job of convincing anyone about this, but like, honestly, for me, Legacy Quake is amazing. He's not, like, I know that objectively he's not great, but in a way it kind of circles around from that and becomes absolutely awesome. So I don't know, I don't think I can explain it. It seems like one of those things where people who know and like own Legacy Quake tend to feel similarly, where they're like, oh yeah, Legacy Quake is amazing, but he just doesn't look like it. He doesn't seem like he should be amazing, but he kind of is, even though it makes no sense. I don't know. Again, I cannot quantify this. It's like playing a 6 out of 10 video game. Not that I'm big on like using that as some kind of worthwhile metric, but like, you know, your average 6 out of 10 style video game. And even though you know it's not great, even though you know it's like a 6 out of 10, you just adore it and you cannot put it down, and it remains one of your favorites years and years later, kind of like Dark Sector. And there's probably only a handful of people who even know what I'm talking about. Anyway, Dark Sector was not a great game, but I absolutely loved it. And similarly, I feel like Quake is not, strictly speaking, a great character, or rather a great figure, but I absolutely love him. And I feel like that's enough. I mean, it makes me happy, so that's all that matters to me. But like, yeah, he's got good articulation. The transformation is really interesting. It's a little bit fiddly, but like, it's still really interesting. And like, yeah, that vehicle mode is so compromised and just not successful, but I don't care. I just respect the way he compacts into that little sad shape, and the robot mode, even if it's a little bit weird, still is really cool. So if you're at all curious about Legacy Quake, then I would say absolutely give him a shot. He may surprise you. He may end up being a favorite. You may not care for him that much. I don't know. Like I said, I wasn't into Skullgrin all that much after a while, but Quake? Oh boy, Quake. And you can probably find him for pretty cheap. I feel like not many people care about him anymore. I could be wrong, but I feel like that's the case. Anyway, that's all I've got to say about this. I've talked long enough. Thank you all for watching. Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. And fingers crossed, the next time I am going to sit down to do some recording, I'll probably have some new metal card bots to look at.